It's the return of the Rams.
This is the worst.
Welcome into the worst fantasy show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay. We are here for Thursday night football, which is suddenly looking way more interesting. Already anticipating the return of Cooper Kupp. Now, potentially, maybe we are also getting the return of Puka Nacua. But we will get into those matchups in just a second. Just a reminder that on today's show, normally we do streamers, but we'll be doing something a little bit special after the show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. If you guys do drop questions, feel free to drop any questions you want in the comments, but I will be reserving any questions for the end of the show when I'm doing a couple, knocking out a couple drafts over on Drafters, just palling around. We'll do that at the end after the matchup. So I'll take all questions at the end. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to leave them in the chat. Also, would really help if you guys could super kick that like and subscribe button. But otherwise, let's get into the Thursday just the matchups in general. Starting with Thursday night football, the main question is going to be, do I start Puka Nacua? I think, generally speaking, this first week back, no. Unless you just have no alternative. Like, if you're asking me a real deep dive of like Puka Nacua or DJ Chark, okay, fine. Start Puka Nacua. But I've seen a lot of analysts ranking him, I would say around wide receiver 30 to 35 range. I think that's appropriate for his first game back. He was eligible to come back and like for him to be activated and already going through warmups. Now, there is still a potential that he goes through warmups and they decide he's not actually going to play. Cooper Kupp, on the other hand, you fire him up. The fact that they didn't play him last week and that he's basically full go for this week. So I think Cooper Kupp 100%. Kyren Williams has a touchdown in every single game this year. He's been the most consistent, one of the most consistent fantasy players out there. Just again, touchdown in every single game, multiple touchdowns in a couple different games. So Kyren has been tremendous. So Kyren and Kupp are both in your lineup. I think Matt Stafford is interesting here. My buddy was asking me, would you start Tua in his return or would you start Matt Stafford, given that he's got at least Cooper Kupp for sure back? And I really didn't know how to answer that, especially once I heard that Puka potentially could play. If Puka is active, I think it's a bit of a wash. I still lean very slightly towards Tua, but I think Stafford is more streamable in this matchup than he's been in a hot minute. Tight end, Colby Parkinson, kind of a really, I view him not even as a tight end 2 right now. Like if all the guys are back, I think he's even more of a tight end 3. But yeah, so I don't want to start him. That would have to be, again, extremely deep over the likes of like a Tyler Conklin or something like that. Tutu Atwell, I think, is the one other wide receiver that you're still going to be able to spot start because, he is going to be able to get it all in a couple of chunk plays. And I actually think having Cooper Kupp and even Puka Nacua back helps Tutu Atwell in a sense, just by drawing coverage away from him. But I don't know that Puka actually is going to play. I do think Cooper Kupp and Tutu Atwell are startable. I think Stafford is streamable. Parkinson is a desperation play, and Kyren is obviously just, every single time in your lineup. On the Viking side, it's much more clear. I think Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are in your lineups, Aaron Jones and Sam Darnold, and that's basically the end of the list. Unless you're in super, super deep leagues and you're taking flyers on a Jalen Naylor, or I'll tell you, even a couple DFS lineups I've been doing as like a very cheap option, or if I punted tight end in some of the best ball drafts I was doing for the primetime stuff on Underdog. Johnny Munt, old Johnny Munt. I took him in a couple spots, but I wouldn't actually play him in any kind of serious leagues. You're basically just playing the starters in a good matchup here. The Sunday games, we can start with the Cardinals at Dolphins, 45.5 point over under, the supposed return of one Tua Tagovailoa. Basically, this is very easy for me. If Tua is in fact in, then everybody is in on the Dolphins. Tyreek, Achane, even Mostert. Waddle is perpetually questionable. So if he's inactive, you play him. I think, though, the one that gets relegated a bit is like the Jonnu Smith play. But I think everybody else is viable if Tua plays. If Tua does not play, though, if Tua decides, actually, I'm not going to be able to make it back for this game, I'm out. I'm out on everybody. For the Cardinals, again, I kind of lamented on the Hearts or Fart show that I think this is as much a Kyler Murray problem as it is a Marvin Harrison Jr. problem. I personally don't want to play Marvin Harrison Jr. as more than a wide receiver 3 with boom capability right now. Trey McBride is in every week just by the nature of, the state of tight ends. Kyler Murray, I think, I would treat him as a streaming option. Like if you actually had a legitimate quarterback that you could play above him in a single quarterback. So if you have a Jordan Love, if you have, one of the other like main quarterbacks, like obviously if you have a Hurts, a Josh Allen, anything like that. But even though the Commanders' defense has looked really good, like a Caleb Williams, for example, I think you could make a strong argument. Geno Smith. I would play Geno Smith, I think, above Kyler. So if you have kind of access to that type of high-end quarterback, Jared Goff is another one. I would play Jared Goff above him. So again, if you drafted 2 quarterbacks because you were nervous about Kyler and you have a really good other option, you can play him. But in most super flex leagues or single quarterback where you didn't take a backup option, like as much as I like Jameis Winston, I still would play Kyler Murray, I think, above Jameis, even though that might end up being the wrong decision. Speaking of, though, that leads right into the Ravens, Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. 44.5 point over under, the debut of Jameis Winston. So we found out that it turns out that it was Deshaun Watson's ego that had Jameis Winston as the quarterback 3 last week, Dorian Thompson Robinson being the backup. So very much excited about the debut of Jameis Winston and how it may affect. I think David Njoku is still a safe play and was even with Deshaun Watson. I think he's even safer maybe with Jameis, who's willing to throw it up. But I think the wide receivers become interesting here. Cedric Tillman is a good little waiver add to stash. I don't know if I want to play him, but I would like to add and see. But Jerry Jeudy also. I don't know if I'm ready to play him, but I'm excited to see what he can do, what all these wide receivers can do with Jameis. And Jameis, if you're in a desperation need in Superflex, I know I'm down bad in a couple Superflex leagues because of injuries or guys that just didn't work out. Shout out to Raiders quarterbacks. I'll play Jameis Winston above all those kind of very low level plays. But I still would play most starting level quarterbacks above him. And as much as I love Nick Chubb, I think he is still very much like working his way back to 100%. I don't think he's going to be ready to get a full workload. And the Ravens are really good against the run. They're very much like a pass funnel. They give up a lot to the pass, but not much to the run. The Browns defense is kind of similar. They are also very good against the run. So Derrick Henry, King Henry, has been extremely dominant all year. I don't know that he's had like a bad game, because even the one game he was in line to have a bad game, he ended up ripping off an 80-yard run. I think maybe it was like the first game of the year. And even then he fell into the end zone. So he's been one of the most consistent running backs in the NFL. But the Cleveland defense, very underrated just how good they've been against how good they have been against the run. And I just pulled it up. Yeah, Derrick Henry has not had a game this year where he has not scored a touchdown. In fact, last week against Tampa was the first week that he had not scored a rushing touchdown on the entire season, and he had a receiving touchdown, which is crazy. But his worst game of the year was, in fact, the very first game. It was against, again, a very tough run defense. It was on the road against Kansas City, 13 for 46 and a touchdown. I could, not that I think that's going to be the line, but I expect this to be, I don't know that he's going to have like the 24 for 150 plus or whatever kind of game. I'm kind of tempering my expectations a little bit. Again, I think you're obviously still playing Derrick Henry. I'm just saying, if this is the kind of week where if I'm playing Derrick Henry, I know that I might need a boom play in, my wide receiver 3 spot or in my flex, as opposed to like a floor play. But just getting back to it, obviously Lamar, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers, and even Mark Andrews are all in your lineup. Mandrews historically kind of flip-floppy against the Browns, either dominates or disappears. But again, state of the tight end, show me the tight end better than him that you're going to play. There's a handful, but Dalton Schultz, that's not it. Any of these, like, Will Dissly, even though he had 11 targets last week, I would still play Mark Andrews. It's so any kind of like secondary or even tertiary tight end plays, you're playing Mark Andrews above them. And Isaiah Likely is still worth a dart throw, even because he'll just pop up randomly. He honestly, like, Isaiah, I look at Isaiah Likely or Dalton Schultz. I think I would. A perfect example is if I'm in a league where I have Derrick Henry and I also have Isaiah Likely and Dalton Schultz at my side, I'm going to play Likely, because if it doesn't turn out to be a Derrick Henry game and maybe they pass a little more, maybe it turns out to be a Likely game and he booms more than Schultz, who is at most going to give me like 5 to 8 points. But we can move on here. Green Bay Packers at the Jacksonville Jaguars, 49.5 point over under. I do really love this game. I've been taking a lot of Jordan Love stacks in my best ball lineups. The problem is knowing who to stack them with. So there's been a lot of times where I've just taken him individually without any other plays. But randomly, I have stacked him with Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft. I think those are the safest plays in terms of their passing options for fantasy. You can take the deep shot on Watson or Wicks, but you don't know which one's going to catch the touchdown which week. This is a week, though, I think, again, just based on the matchup, if you're looking for just a boom play, above even all the Buccaneers wide receivers right now, I would play Watson or Wicks and just hope one of them catches a long touchdown. That's kind of where I'm at. So I think, again, you can play Jaden Reed with a little bit of confidence because he does seem to be the most consistent. I think Tucker Kraft is a solid tight end play. Jordan Love is a fabulous quarterback play. I like Josh Jacobs in this game. I do think Josh Jacobs ends up scoring a touchdown in this game. On the Jaguars side, even though the Packers are a really good defense, they are definitely much tougher in Green Bay as opposed to when they are on the road. So I do like the Jaguars a little bit more than I would normally against this Green Bay Packers defense. But I think I'm kind of sick of Christian Kirk. I know he's gonna have good games. I'm just sick of trying to decide when those games are going to be. I think at this point, I will start Brian Thomas Jr. just as a week in, week out. To me, he's proven himself already as just a legitimate wide receiver one in the NFL, which is crazy as a rookie, especially given everything going on with this team right now. That he is outperforming Marvin Harrison Jr. so outlandishly, it's kind of crazy. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. week in, week out. Evan Ingram, every time he plays, you play him because, again, tight ends, and he can just anytime go for 8 to 10 receptions. So he's magic in PPR leagues, especially. Trevor Lawrence, I think you can play him in this matchup. I do think that Green Bay is going to win. I think Jordan Love can drop 3 to 5 touchdowns in this game. So I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have to, try and keep up with that a little bit. ETN still it floats between questionable and doubtful. I don't know exactly what's going on. This is exactly what I mean about how I was saying how next year I'm changing all my leagues so that they're all questionable. Or sorry, I was saying next year I'm going to have like 5 IR spots, and whether it's questionable, doubtful, whatever, like you can put your guy on IR because I'm sick of the NFL messing around with this. But I would play Trevor Lawrence again above like backup quarterbacks here. And then you can play Tank Bigsby. I wouldn't mess around with Dearness Johnson. That one feels like really low level. And then, yeah, I don't want to mess with Christian Kirk or kind of the tertiary because I think I'm limiting myself very much to T-Law above backup quarterback level, Brian Thomas Jr. just week in and week out, and I guess Christian Kirk if you like really have to. Let's move on here. Colts at Texans. Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. And shout out to Pareko. I do see your question in the comments. We will get to that a little bit later. Shout out also to my guy Sleazeball, left a comment for me saying first. But yes, any comments you guys drop along the way, I will answer them towards the end of the show when we get into the drafters segment. Okay. So we were at Colts, Indianapolis Colts at Houston Texans. Let's start jamming through some of these a little bit faster. Jonathan Taylor should be active, I think, for this game. So if he is, you play him. If Anthony Richardson plays, you can play him, but nobody else. It's A-Rich, it's Jonathan Taylor, and not much else. If Joe Flacco plays, then all of a sudden the wide receivers become viable again. But I will not play a wide receiver with any kind of confidence while A-Rich is in the game. On the Houston Texans side, I do think you can go back to the Tank Dell well, even though he dropped a goose on you last week. I think this is, if he doesn't do it this week, then it's going to be really like rough to play him in any kind of form going forward. But I do think he can have a good week this week. I think CJ Stroud has a bounce back week. It's a home game. The Colts defense has been kind of mid, and they do give it up to the pass. So I think Diggs, Dell, Stroud, they're all active for me. And then Joe Mixon is an obvious smash play. Dalton Schultz if you're absolutely desperate. The Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 46-point over-under here. Even though the Buccaneers wide receivers are all dead, I'm still playing Baker Mayfield. Just to give you a perfect example, I have a league where I picked up Jameis Winston, single quarterback league. I'm still going to play Baker Mayfield ahead of Jameis, at least for this week. I think Cade Otton, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, they're all receiving assets still. Whatever they can get from the wide receivers. And And the last time they had the Falcons matchup, it was a pretty good matchup for Baker. I still think that he can score 20-ish fantasy points here. So I'm not shying away from Baker Mayfield. I would play Baker. I like Rachaad White. I think Bucky Irving is still a flex play. The wide receivers, I'm not messing with it. I want to see. I need at least a week or two of data before I'm trying to throw them in my lineup ahead of, again, like Tutu Atwell over every Bucks wide receiver right now. I don't care. So I would play again Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Cade Otton, Baker Mayfield. On the Falcon side, it's very obvious. Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. They're all in your lineup. I don't think you can play Tyler Algier here. That's the one where I'm like, he's on my bench this week. He's not a flex to me. Philadelphia Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals. 48-point over-under here. This potentially could be a big-time shootout. I think you just fire up everybody you got. Obviously, the quarterbacks are both in, Hurts and Burrow. Obviously, the wide receivers, the two primary, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, even though he's coming off a bad game, and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. They're all in. Tight ends, forget about it. Dallas Goedert is out, and I'm not messing with the Bengals tight ends. The running backs, I don't like the Bengals running backs. I thought Chase Brown was starting to emerge, and then, of course, he disappears as soon as I start to think that. So I don't like the Bengals running backs. Saquon, I mean, obviously you're starting Saquon week in and week out. That's we can move on from this, but that should be a high-flying, high-scoring matchup. And then we get to bring it right back down with the New York Jets at the New England Patriots, a 41-point over-under here. I start your studs. Breece Hall, you start him. I think Devontae Adams, even though it was rough last week, he saw 9 targets in his first game, so you play him. I think you can play Garrett Wilson still. I don't really want to mess with Conklin. You can play Aaron Rodgers if you have to. I know I have to in a couple Superflex leagues, even one where I made a trade for Rodgers in a Dynasty Superflex where I'm competing potentially for a championship, and I only have 2 quarterbacks, and I wanted to kind of shore that up, get a backup. Aaron Rodgers was available, so I went and picked him up for a second rounder, which if I finish is closer to a third rounder. But yeah, so on the Patriots side, I mean, God, this is a tough matchup. They are at home, but I wouldn't personally want to start any New England Patriots player. Even Ramondre Stevenson, he's practicing now. He took like a personal day, is also dealing with a foot injury. Again, it's such a tough matchup against a really good Jets defense. I hate this for the Patriots. I think Drake May is going to like throw for 202, but I also think he's going to have 2 to 3 interceptions and is just going to, like, I guess start him over if you have a Titans quarterback or a Raiders quarterback, but like, yeah, I would avoid Patriots at all costs this week. Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions, 45-point over-under here. Fire up all of your Lions. Jameson Williams now with the suspension. Hopefully we get some big Laporta weeks. So I have been sliding Sam Laporta into a lot of my best ball lineups. But I think Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, just every single week are in your lineup. Sam Laporta, even with how rough it's been, he's in your lineup every single week, and I think this could potentially be a good week for him. On the Titans side, Tony Pollard. There you go. You start Tony Pollard, and you pray that he gets you your fantasy points that you need. Temper your expectations because it is a tough matchup. Move on. Oh, Lions DST. I picked them up in one league. If for some reason you see them floating around, hell of a week to play them. All right, let's get into the 4 p.m. games. Knock these out. Buffalo Bills at the Seattle Seahawks, 47-point over-under. another one of our big games of the week here. Going to be a lot of fantasy assets. I expect DK Metcalf to miss this game. It was immediately announced as not practicing Wednesday and Thursday. Again, this is the NFL effing around with these bullshit injuries and the designations. Like, how is this man immediately tagged as not practicing Wednesday, Thursday, but he's questionable? Like, come on now. We all know DK Metcalf is going to not play. I should be able to put him on my IR and pick somebody up. But no, I got to wait for them to stop fucking around and wait till like Sunday to pick someone up. It's so annoying. Again, next year, I'm petitioning 5 IR spots. Every single injury designation can go in IR. Questionable, doubtful, NA, out. I don't care what it is. They can all go in. All right. But because I am expecting DK Metcalf to miss, Tyler Lockett and JSN are startable here. Geno Smith, I would still start him above a lot of like tertiary plays and secondary plays. I also think Kenneth Walker could potentially miss this game. I snuck Zach Charbonnet into a couple lineups, and I went and picked him up in a couple waivers in leagues where I saw that he was dropped. So keep an eye on if Zach Charbonnet is out floating in your league on waivers, stash him, because if Kenneth Walker does miss, he is an excellent plug and play if you need it. And again, Walker already dealing with injuries, but he was not practicing now because of an illness. So it might be just a 1 week play. So this is not like a long thing. But again, just stash Charbonnet and keep that in the back of your mind. Maybe if you're doing a couple best ball lineups and you got that last pick in the draft, take Zach Charbonnet if you still need a running back. But on the Bills side, very easy. Josh Allen. I think you can start Amari Cooper. The fact that he was the one that had the touchdown his first week, and this is such a positive matchup, fuck it. I'm firing him up above, again, like every Chargers wide receiver, every Saints wide receiver, every Bucks wide receiver. With all the fucking injuries, like bet your bottom dollar Amari Cooper is going to be in my lineup. I don't care if it is his second game with the team. Again, he caught a touchdown last week. That's all I needed. All right. So Josh Allen, Amari Cooper, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, even though tight ends have been atrocious, he has been kind of mid. You just plug your nose and play whatever tight end you got. And that's it. I know Keon Coleman caught that long touchdown, but that felt very fluky. That felt like Gabe Davis-esque. I need to see a little bit more consistency from the kid before I just start throwing him, unless it's like a deep dart throw in a 16-teamer, like, it's for the birds. All right, New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Chargers. No. Alvin Kamara. I mean, look, the Chargers are actually a good defense and they run the ball a lot. And so I expect this to be a short game. I don't want to play again. We're talking short redraft, like any 10 to 12 man league, unless I just am completely decimated. Like I'm the guy that had Godwin and Rice and Mike Evans and whatever else wide receiver is on IR. Like, okay, fine, but I'm not playing. Look, I'm the Bub Means Stan. I had him in dynasty leagues before anyone. I liked Bub Means before it was cool. But no, I wouldn't play him. Tipton, Cedric, none of them. I'm not playing the Rattler Snake. This is Kamara or bust. Even if Taysom Hill's back, I'm not fucking with that. It's Kamara or bust. Chargers side, what are we doing with the Chargers? Like, yeah. I want Lad McConkey to be a thing. It's not really a thing. I don't know. He's also dealing with a hip injury. It's like you play the running back Dobbins until he's injured, and then make sure you're stashing Kamani Vidal because it does feel like an inevitably with the workload he's getting, Dobbins will get hurt. Justin Herbert, just sum of all parts. Again, I'll play him above Raiders quarterback. I'll play him above Marcus Mariota. I'll play him above Spencer Rattler. Even Bo Nix, even though Bo Nix has been all right. Those kind of level of plays, that's the only kind of level that I'm playing him above. So yeah, this for me is like Dobbins and almost nothing else. And again, I do see the questions. Nigel, Caesar, thank you again for you guys stopping by. I'm going to smash through the rest of these matchups. We're going to get into the questions in the second part of the show when I am doing a couple of best ball drafts over on Drafters. It'll just be easier to go through all the questions all at once. So just appreciate you guys holding on. I do see those, though. I'm not ignoring you guys. All right. We got 3 left here for Sunday afternoon. So let's just quickly get through these because they kind of suck. Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders. This was supposed to be so good. This was supposed to be the 1 and 2 pick. Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels. Again, Washington fucking around, has Jaden Daniels questionable, like he's going to play. He's not going to play. This is going to be Marcus Mariota, which makes me not want to play Terry McLaurin if I can help it. If I don't have a better option, like, I guess. But I would like to be able to say Brian Robinson and no one else. And even that is going to be, tough sledding again. It's a tough Bears defense. On the Bears side, I do think you can start Caleb Williams. I do think you can start DeAndre Swift. I think you have to play DJ Moore. Like, if you invested in him, you play DJ Moore. And the Commanders' defense has been really good. And this is a home matchup. But this does feel like the type of game where they can get taken advantage of a little bit. I could see a big DJ Moore explosion week. I'm hoping for that, maybe selfishly. I think Keenan Allen is the one that makes me nervous. I have taken a couple deep shots on Keenan Allen again in like best ball DFS formats. I do think he's playable. I think Roma Dunes is the one that takes the back seat when it's both of them, or when it's all 3 of them, DJ, Keenan, and Rome. So I think I would play DJ Moore, not with confidence, but I would play him. I would play Keenan Allen. I would play Caleb Williams. DeAndre Swift has been a revelation the last 3 weeks, so you ride that hot hand. And again, you hope that because they are the ones that have their starting quarterback and maybe they get up early and, I think again for tight end, you just start Cole Kmet and you just pray. You pray it's a Cole Kmet week in terms of catching a touchdown. But on the Commander side, again, it's without Jaden Daniels. I really think that I even think the Zach Ertz play is not really super viable with Mariota personally. I think I would just avoid the matchup. Brian Robinson, it's hard to avoid starting running backs. I think that's the one play that you can still do. But yeah, I'm assuming Jaden Daniels misses, and I'm not really trying to start Mariota and his receivers. This next matchup is even worse. The Carolina Panthers at the Denver Broncos, 41.5 point over under. Shout out and prayers, thoughts and prayers, whatever, to Andy Dalton, who's in a car accident, and he won't be starting in this game. So we get Bryce Young again against a really wicked tough Broncos defense. This sucks. I wouldn't even start Deontay Johnson personally, because it's like, I think the really good kid for the Broncos, the defensive back, I'm pretty sure he's out. But man, this is still a really bad matchup. And with Bryce Young coming back in, maybe he shocks the world. But personally, I would treat Deontay Johnson as like a wide receiver 3 floor play. Chuba Hubbard, I think you play and temper your expectations, and that is it. On the Broncos side, I mean, if there ever was a positive matchup, you play Bo Nix, I guess. You can maybe throw in Cortland Sutton or like a Devon Vale, or if you're a real Troy Franklin stan. But I think this is, for me, Javonte Williams, and move on. And speaking of moving on, we get into the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders, 41.5 point over under. Oh, how depressing is it that we're questioning whether we're starting Mahomes and Kelsey, but again, above most options, like I'm still honestly playing Mahomes and Kelsey. The DeAndre Hopkins trade, I think, breathes life into the team. I do think that's actually a great move for them. I think that's going to work down the stretch. This is not something that's going to be a week one thing, though. And Nuke was legitimately dealing with some injuries while in Tennessee. So I don't think he's going to be like, going off like week one. So I'm not playing a Chiefs wide receiver yet. I'm very much stashing DeAndre Hopkins and waiting for like that first kind of like game where I see like 6-7 targets. Like, oh, okay, he's kind of healthy. And then he'll be weekly starter for me. But for right now, I think it's Kareem Hunt, which is crazy to say. Shout out to there was some guy who gave me so much shit last year for drafting Kareem Hunt. I was like, dude, he's a last round pick in best ball. And last year he scored 9 touchdowns. And it's hilarious that this man is still producing even this year now. So fuck you to that guy. But no, for real, you start Kareem Hunt because he's been so good and the Raiders have been so bad. And he's just getting crazy volume right now, and the Chiefs need him. So Kelsey, Mahomes, Hunt, and on the Raiders side, nada. It's Brock Bowers, and that's it. You literally, and honestly, you're just hoping and praying that whatever quarterback is in, which is going to be Gardner Minshew this week, you think, unless the quarterback loses, or not quarterback, unless Minshew plays bad, and then Antonio Pierce just really loses his mind. And again, shout out to Dan Hansis of Heed the Call podcast. He has this theory that Antonio Pierce just really dislikes Gardner Minshew as a person. And I think I agree with that notion. And I think that's really funny because it is about like the personal dynamics of the player and coach sometime. And, they signed Desmond Ridder, I think, for a reason. I would not be shocked if by the end of this game we see Desmond Ridder come in. So I think you start Chiefs defense. If Chiefs defense is out there on any waivers, you can definitely fire them up in your DST spot. All right, last 2 matchups, and then we'll get into some questions and some drafters. Cowboys at 49ers. Dallas Cowboys at the San Fran 49ers. 46.5 point over under. This is your Sunday night football matchup. Unfortunately, Brandon Ayuk out for the season. However, Deebo Samuel, I think, is going to play. He was in the hospital for pneumonia. He was dealing with an illness last week, which is why he missed. He has been spotted at practice, so I do think that he is going to play in this game. George Kittle has missed basically every Wednesday practice, veteran rest. He's practicing now. He should be available. So you fire up Purdy, Kittle, Deebo. I do think you can start Jordan Mason here. The fact that he played through the AC sprain last week, crazy to me. So it seems like that's just a pain tolerance issue. So if he's going to play, then I think you play him. Unless you just have like incredible RB depth, because it is possible that you picked him up off waivers and you don't need him. If that's the case, I could see you playing your, 2 starting running backs and you have all this great talent like ahead of them. Okay, I get it, but most people aren't going to be in that situation. So I think he's still startable. Dallas side, Dak Prescott again over, I would have him at like quarterback 15 with maybe some upside and hoping this turns into a big game. I think CeeDee Lamb, obvious in your lineup. Rico Dowdle has seemingly taken a hold. I think he's startable as a running back 2 floor play here. I think Jalen Tolbert also is kind of like a wide receiver 3 play. Maybe a flex if you really need it, or if you're just, again, hurting at depth and Tolbert is out there. He's seemingly emerging as the wide receiver 2 for this team. And then obviously Fergalicious, the tight end, is in. And finally, the Monday Night Football matchup between the New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers. 36.5 point over under. 36.5 whole points? Are you serious and for true? No, I think the Steelers, it's very obvious. Russ, as much as I hate it, he had a good game, and he is a starting quarterback, and he's going to be startable above. Again, we talked about kind of the list of quarterbacks that we don't want. The Spencer Rattler, the Bryce Young of the world, the Marcus Mariota of the world. So I would start Russell Wilson over those guys. I think really the plays are George Pickens, Najee Harris, week in and week out. I'm sorry to mute Pat Freiermuth fans. He'll never be a thing as long as Arthur Smith is in town because he loves to use all our random tight ends. Not to say that Muth will never have a good game, but you'll never know when it's coming. So yeah, again, to me, this is you start Pickens and Najee, and in a desperation pinch, Russell Wilson. On the Giants side, you avoid this game at all costs. Look, Malik Neighbors, I think you can start him and temper your expectations because if there is one way to beat the Steelers, it is via the pass through the air. I would not play Singletary or even Tyrone Tracy in this matchup. The Steelers' run defense especially has been monstrous this season, and I think this is just a bad matchup. And you know what? You saw the Eagles feast on Daniel Jones last week. 7 sacks did they get on Daniel Jones, and then they even got one on Drew Lock. Like, this is going to be – I think this is going to be just another feast. I think the Steelers' defense is going to kick the shit out of the Giants on primetime football. I could play quarterback for the Steelers, and we would still win this game. Trust. So, yeah, I would actually not play any – options from the Giants if I can help it. All right. That is it for the Thursday matchups. Let's get into some of these questions. And then I'll jump over and knock out a couple drafts on drafters. Let's start with Pareko. Hey, what's up, Pareko? Trade Mahomes plus Brees or Kyren for Jaden Daniels, Tony Pollard, and Malik Neighbors in a redraft super flex. Wide receiver 1 now is Justin Jefferson. Other quarterbacks are Anthony Richardson and Jameis Winston, and I'm 2-5. Can't decide which RB to trade. Well, I would not trade Kyren. I don't want to trade Brees right now either. I think Brees has more value, though. If you're insistent on doing this deal, I would trade Mahomes and Brees for Daniels, Pollard, and Neighbors. I do think Kyren Williams has just been so consistent this year. He literally has a touchdown in every single game. And it's not just like, oh, he's getting a touchdown. He's getting legitimate RB1 workhorse usage. He's one of the only running backs in the NFL getting that true RB workhorse usage, even more so than Brees this year. So I think Kyren is the easy keep for me. I do think it can get better with Mahomes now too. I think you could end up being disappointed trading Mahomes away. Jaden Daniels is now dealing with injuries. What if let's put this in perspective, all right? And we just saw Daniel Jones get his ass kicked by the Eagles. Took 7 sacks. 7 sacks. That's rough. All right. So if you think about it, what if Daniels gets hurt again and misses games? And then what if Neighbors gets hurt again or his quarterback gets hurt and he's has some down games? I think there's very much a world where those two assets are disappointing. Whereas I know Mahomes has been mid. I get it. I understand all of the complaints. I have him in Dynasty. I have him in a couple places. The fact that everyone is bitching and moaning and complaining about Patrick Mahomes being like the most mid quarterback ever, the man is undefeated so far this season, and I'm pretty sure he has still scored you at bare minimum 15 fantasy points every single game. 15 fantasy points every single game. He now is getting DeAndre Hopkins, who even at this stage of his career, I think is an excellent possession type wide receiver that fills in that Juju Smith-Schuster role or that Rashee Rice role. I think down the stretch, Mahomes could be a lot better for fantasy as the season wears on. And I think if the bare minimum that you're getting is the 15 points a game, you could have worse. Now, if I could somehow switch this to Anthony Richardson, which would be a hard sell, I would honestly almost be willing. I would like what I don't know what other quarterbacks they have, but if they have like a quarterback to maybe someone like a Geno Smith or a Kirk Cousins or a Matt Stafford, if I could switch them into the deal so that I could keep Mahomes and I could trade A-Rich and Brees for Daniels, Pollard, and Neighbors. Now that I would be a lot more comfortable with, because I really think that a big reason that you're 2-5, yes, Mahomes has been mid, but I think A-Rich has been incredibly disappointing as well. And that's kind of my thing of like, again, where I see it can get better for Mahomes, I don't know that it gets better for Anthony Richardson. Puka or Sutton, 0.5 PPR. God damn. Yeah, that's a tough one. Look, if Puka's active, like active, like go check right now. Like literally, if he's active, fully active, I think I would start Puka. Because as much as I like Sutton, he just really hasn't done much. And I just don't think they're going to need him to beat the Panthers. I expect them to lean on the run. Do you think I should start Jonathan Taylor this week or until next week? Again, it's all about context, my guy. I appreciate the question, but it always depends over who. I would start him over like really low end. Look, any Raiders running back, sure, I'll start Jonathan Taylor even this first week. So any kind of really bad RB2 options, even if they're starters, I would start Jonathan Taylor right away. If you have the depth and you're able to withstand having him on the bench another week, I'm totally fine with that. But you have to have the depth. Again, like I would play him very much over like, running back 3 options. Shout out my guy SC Romero from the PPR show. Would you rather start Anthony Richardson rest of the season or bet on Roman Reigns winning the Universal Championship in 2025? Well, yeah, I mean, one of these is a lock, and one of them is not. I think it's almost a lock that Roman wins the Universal Championship in 2025, whereas I don't think Anthony Richardson starts the rest of the season. I expect him to get hurt. So I'll take your Roman bet. And who is more mid, Cody Rhodes or Derek Carr? Bro, it's definitely Derek Carr. I know people are hating on Cody Rhodes. It's not Cody's fault. It's the booking. And I've said this before, and I've said it 1,000 times. I'm so sick of this age of, especially that title in particular, of the universal title of every time a guy gets it, he's got to hold it for like at least a year. I'm sick of this shit. Cody should have lost that belt twice already. He should have lost to AJ Styles, quite frankly, and he should have lost to Solo Sikoa. It's not his fault. It's the booking. You could already have Cody be a 3-time WWE champion, and everyone would be way more enamored with that than just having him hold it this whole time from WrestleMania up until now. If you had him lose the first time to Solo and then win it back because of Roman, it wasn't like, if not just defend it, but actually win back the title because of Roman. That would have been a way better story beat, first of all. And the same thing with AJ Styles. AJ Styles could have beat him in France because the crowd was so fucking crazy. And then they run it back, and then Cody wins it back. And then you could have even just run it back a third time and have Cody win that one. If you had an actual, like, 3-match feud for the title where AJ wins that first one at Backlash in front of the Lyon France crowd, and then you have Cody win the next two. Like, damn, that's a way better again. So I don't blame Cody necessarily, but I agree that the run hasn't been as good as it could have been. All right, let's actually jump into a couple drafts over on Drafters. So again, these are, if you guys are not familiar out there, they are best ball drafts where you basically do a lineup. It's tiered pricing. I actually won this last week, which was crazy. I did it by stacking teams. So kind of some just general thoughts and musings about these kind of best ball tournaments while we wait for this one in particular to fill. I think it can be hard to really do some differentiated lineups without breaking the ADP. So, and what I mean by that is you can't just come in and pick a bunch of random dudes that are like way down the draft board. And it's for a couple of reasons. First of all, probably going to get flagged. Doesn't matter what platform you're on, whether it's Drafters or Underdog or DraftKings or whatever. If you just pick a bunch of scrubs, even if you have your own reasons for why you're picking those guys, generally speaking, that kind of draft will get canceled to maintain the integrity of the contest. Because the problem is, by you doing that, you're allowing some other team to get like a crazy super team that normally should never be allowed to be drafted. But with all that said, I think one of the easiest ways to win these tournaments is to differentiate yourself. And especially, again, it can be certain tournaments I feel like are just pure luck in the sense of like you have to have picked the right selection of players. And then there are tournaments where there are so many players that you could have picked the right selection of players, but so could have somebody else. And that's kind of where, again, it's like, and then you end up with like split prizes. And it does feel like people can be a little bit of ADP slaves. And I think, especially I've noticed when I've been doing drafts here on Drafters, there are certain guys that are way low on the board right now. And there are certain matchups that I think are just being completely ignored. And so, just kind of going through some of the matchups that we were just looking at together. One of the ones that I've actually targeted a lot, like heavily, is Buffalo, Seattle. I think that's probably the one that I might be the most overweight on right now. Just kind of looking at some of the teams that I've already done. So Jordan Love is another one too that I just have a shit ton of this week. But Jordan Love. Josh Allen, though, is the other one. So if I'm looking at the quarterbacks that I think are very likely finishing this week in the top 5, like to me, the most likely bets are Josh Allen and Jordan Love. So those are probably the quarterbacks that I'm the most heavyweight on right now. And we got one upcoming. Let's go jump in. Oh, I thought it said it was ready. Oh, here it is. I was like, what? Here we go. Here's our active draft. So you guys are just going to have to be touch patient with your old boy here. I don't do the Drafters one as much. Usually I'm on Underdog for these. But I really like Drafters. I like the the contests are a little different. I will say they kind of tricked me. It was really my fault. It was just late at night, and I wasn't paying attention, and I joined the wrong contest. So there was these NBA contests, and I mistakenly joined a $55 one instead of the $5.50 one. So yeah, that was my fault. I saw 5.5. I was like, oh yeah, there's the $5 one. Yeah. Shout out my guy Essie Romero. Who's the better athlete, Malik Neighbors or Jacob Fatu? Ooh. Oh, that's a tough one. Athlete? Okay, athlete Malik Neighbors, because athlete to me means a different thing, I think, than how I view Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu is like, that man's just tough. Like, yeah, he's athletic. Obviously, he's very athletic, but there is a toughness to the man. Whereas like Malik Neighbors is graceful in his athleticism. That's the nature of being a wide receiver versus, Jacob Fatu would be like a defensive lineman, right? Like he'd be like a D end. So, again, getting back to some of the strategy for some of these, all depends on draft position. I think one of the things I've noticed a lot too for these, whether I'm on drafters or on underdog, sometimes there will be a huge wide receiver run, and sometimes there will be a huge running back run. If I'm at this 5 spot or even at the 4 spot and it goes wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, I'll probably take running back. And if it goes running back, running back, running back, I'll probably take a receiver. That guy got auto drafting. He got the dreaded Lamar auto pick. All right, what are we doing here? Are we going running back? Are we going wide receiver? Let's go wide receiver. Let's keep it easy and simple for this first build. We're going to go with Amon-Ra. Very consistent wide receiver here, and I've got an idea for an easy stack that we can build later in this draft. I really do believe in overstacking is another one. I think for 2 reasons. One is that it just feels like so often when a team hits, it's like all their players hit. It's funny because it's like it seems like an obvious thing. Ooh, okay. I really like this. Let's go with CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, let's go double wide receiver here. 2 prime wide receivers. It's also important to note that on drafters, the roster construct is 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, and a flex. Last week when I won, I was using the overstacking method. I had Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Saquon Barkley. And then my other 2 running backs hit. I had Jahmyr Gibbs had the monster week, but then also going into Sunday night, I had Breece Hall. That was all I had left, and that was enough to carry me in the first place. So that was great for your boy. Wide receivers are very deep, especially on drafters, I feel like. So I have not been afraid to punt wide receiver and take guys further down the list. But we're going traditional here. Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb to start. Ooh, and we are back on the board, and I want to finish off my wide receivers here. So I'm actually going to drop down. We're going to take T. Higgins. I am not a T. Higgins guy, but he does have spike weeks, and we love spike weeks in best ball. And I think the matchup against Philadelphia is delicious. I'm expecting a big, high-scoring game there. And there's a lot of running backs that I still love. Look at Derrick Henry. Even though I'm tempering my expectations on Derrick Henry because of a tough Cleveland defense, there's no way I'm letting him go past the 4th round. Jesus. So I love that. And just looking down here, James Cook against Seattle, I like. Josh Jacobs, I like a lot. Javonte Williams is a differentiator. But really going down the list, Rachaad White. We saw last week Rachaad White had a couple touchdowns, and it feels like they're going to have to lean on him even more now with the wide receivers out, and it's a decent matchup against Atlanta. So I've been throwing some Rachaad White. Again, you want to talk about a guy who could very easily get you the same 20 points, but be a complete differentiator in your lineup. Rachaad White, worth some deep dive plays. At wide receiver, some of those deep plays for me. Look at how far we got to scroll all the way down here. But then we get to the Seattle boys. I kind of mentioned it earlier. JSN. Oh, Jesus Christ. My ball thing is going crazy. Here we go. Tyler Lockett and JSN. Either one of them, I think, are fantabulous dart throws. Whether you're doing best ball lineups or whether you're doing like the salary DFS stuff, shout out to my guy Disco, big draft energy. And if you guys are signing up to drafters for the first time, or if you guys want to try Owner's Box, if you want to do the DFS stuff, make sure you use the code Disco for my guy Disco. Really helps him out with his stuff. Man, Devon Achane is just staring me in the face here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to take that pop. That pop. Again, we want big spike weeks here. If we get spike weeks from all these guys, that's how we're laughing all the way to the bank. And I'm loving this lineup right now. Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and T. Higgins. Whoop, whoop. So I actually think we're going to get a high-end flex, and then we'll deal with our tight end quarterback situation after, because I know nobody's going to take our guys, which is nice. I'm deciding if I want to go – I know I want to go triple running back. I just can't decide if I want Josh Jacobs. Oh, well, there we go. That made the decision for us. Let's go ahead and take James Cook. I think it could be a good James Cook week. And then just to give myself away here, we're going to grab Sam Laporta and Jared Giff. We're going to go with a super Detroit stack here. Tennessee got slaughtered last week. So, again, their defense is reeling. And I don't see any reason that they're going to go into Detroit and not get smacked around the same way the Bills smacked them around last week. So I'm firing up all of my Lions, but I really like Laporta, especially. I'm very overweight on Sam Laporta this week in terms of my best ball plays at tight end. I also really love Jahmyr Gibbs. It just feels like, just for shits and giggles, it's going to turn into a David Montgomery week to fuck with me, because he's the only one that I feel like I'm not overweight on this week. And it's very much because, one, Tennessee's defense is underrated. Like, they are pretty decent, but more so against the run. And, against a running back like a David Montgomery, where it's like an electric guy like Gibbs is very much capable of taking them to task. So I don't super love the matchup for Montgomery. Plus, he's still dealing with having banged up in last week's game. So, that's just kind of my line of thinking. I can't believe Josh Allen's still on the board. I'm very tempted to take him, but no, we're going to stick to our plan. We're going to take Jared Goff, and we're going to take Sam Laporta. We're going to go super Detroit stack here. And again, it just feels like it's something not a lot of people are doing right now, is the super stacks on a team, taking 3, even 4 guys from a team, which, again, in the season-long stuff, don't recommend. But for 1 week, when you identify a matchup and you're like, yeah, I do think that this team could just go and blow this other team out by 40 points, it's fine to be overweight on them. Again, I won last week being overweight on the Eagles, even though it was only 28-3. Again, Saquon, AJ Brown both had monster games, and then in a low-scoring quarterback week, Jalen Hurts was actually pretty good. All right, We'll do another one of these, and then we're gonna get on out of here. We'll go watch some Thursday night football. How about that? We got what 10 minutes left before game time. Perfect. That's actually perfect timing. All right. And yeah, I've been doing a ton of these on Underdog. This was my first big win of the year too. Like I won last year at the end of the year. Ironically, not on football though. I was on hockey. I won $1,000 on a weekly hockey randomly at the end of the year last year. But this year, to get one early on the football felt real good. I got to tell you, and especially because so I won 1,500 US. I live in Canada. That's damn near $2,000. So that's nice. But it's funny because I split it, and my wife, she was like, "How'd you split it?" It was well, I cashed out 1080 and I left 420 in the bank to bet with. Lucky numbers, right? But yeah, I ended up. So I. It's funny because it's like yeah, I had 420, but I then made a separate cash out so that I could split that money between underdog and drafters. I do believe in spreading the money across multiple apps, though I do think that your odds of winning are better on drafters right now. I don't want to say that the competition is less, but it is. I think it's just from a from a popularity standpoint. Again, I don't think that there are the creators that are repping drafters or that are on drafters right now are less smart. And I've started seeing more crossover of some heavyweights in the underdog world starting to come over to drafters. Shout out to Eagles. If you've seen him on X, he is a huge best ball guy, massive in the underdog world. But yeah, I I think underdog is kind of like the big bad wolf right now. But drafters again, some wide open territory. It feels like in the drafters rooms. And again, I pulled down $2,000 last week. I'm hoping I can repeat, go back to back here. Maybe pull down another $2,000 for myself. All right. Hopefully this fills up pretty soon because I do want to get out of here so I can go watch the games. If it doesn't, I might just bail. I'm not gonna lie. If you guys got any more last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If this thing fills in the next like 2 minutes, then I'll knock out the draft. But otherwise, I think I'll actually just jump on out of here. I don't want to drag this much further. We're already over an hour, anyways. Oh, just looking for news on Puka Nakua. Make any last minute decisions. It does say he's active. I don't see if it says he's starting anywhere. What's going on? Puka. Says to return to play Thursday night. That was an hour ago. That's the soonest I have. Everything else is 7 to 11 hours ago, 4 hours ago. Let's go see officially maybe on Sleeper. Trust Sleeper over everything else. Puka. Yeah, I mean, this is still not any official word, but all I've got is what it says here. Nakua was activated off injured reserve, but has not played since suffering a knee injury in week 1. Wide receiver expected to test out his knee in pregame warmups to determine how much playing time he would see in his return. Considering he may be on a snap count, fantasy managers should consider potentially finding another starting option for week 8. I do agree with that. Again, if you are depending on him as anything more than a wide receiver 3, I think that could be cause for potential disappointment. You know what? I am just going to let this go. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Go right now and throw on the pregame and check out and see if they're announcing anything about if Puka Nacua is in. If he is officially active and they're like he's going to play even on a snap count, wide receiver 3, ranked wide receiver 30 to 35, play him as such. But hey, I wish you guys the best of luck tonight on your Thursday night football matchups. The best of luck all week on your fantasy football matchups. And I will see you guys Sunday morning at 9 a.m. to answer all your final fantasy football questions. But until the next time, I'll catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes